Hello folks, it's been a while, but I guess to put the long and short, I figured I'd do what I do best on YouTube, just comic reviews. So this book is Spider-Man vs. Venom Omnibus. I'm not going to spoil anything in the book. It's more so just a general overview of the contents in the book. And yeah, let's just dig right in. So, there's a lot. I will mention what the issues are as we go through them. I guess for starters, what exactly is this book? The book is called Spider-Man vs. Venom Omnibus. I feel this title is a little misleading. The book, quite frankly, is Venom Volume 0, or perhaps a better title would be Venom the Early Years. So, there is another book, and I'm pointing to it right now in the editing, but there's another book that I plan to review at some given point called the Venom Omnibus Volume 1. Now, even though it's called Volume 1, it doesn't actually contain Venom's earliest appearances. It's actually Venom's solo series, Volume 1. So, you know, the comics where it's just him. But if you want the stories where the character originates from, where he fights Spider-Man and other characters, this is the book for that. So again, better title for the book would be Venom the Early Years Omnibus. So I bet you're thinking, well, if this is a collection of early years for Venom, is it really a collection of stories that isn't repeated? And the answer is no. It is mostly content that has been collected elsewhere. Maybe not in the context of Venom, but it has been collected elsewhere. However, I bought it for a reason I'll get to in a moment. So, first I want to compare it to this book. This is Birth of Venom. Now I have no idea if this book is still available. It probably is, because it's like, it was in print for like 10 years. Like, the version I own is like a 10th printing, but, or something like that. But, you know, this book, it's old, and there's a few problems with it. So, if you own this, the Omnibus is a good upgrade. But to kind of explain what the problem with this older book is, it's called Birth of Venom, but a lot of the content is not relevant to the Venom character. And I will explain that as we go along in this big book. So, let us begin. So, the book begins after some credit pages. We get Secret Wars issue 8. Falsely attributed as the first appearance of the black suit. The black suit actually first appeared in Spider-Man 252. However, that issue does not explain where the suit came from. It simply says, Spider-Man has a new black suit. Read Secret Wars to find out why. And it's not till Secret Wars issue 8 that they actually explain where the suit came from. And explain very quickly, as despite Secret Wars being a 12-issue series, the black suit Spider-Man and Spider-Man in general are hardly a focus of it. In fact, only really about 2 pages and a few panels are relevant to the Venom character. Basically, Spider-Man, his costume is destroyed, he needs to fix it, finds a machine that the others tell him about, and then this little black ball of goo attaches itself to him. And he says, cool, a new costume, but why is it a little black ball of goo? Well, we'll find out later, of course. But, yeah, the suit appeared in Spider-Man 252 first, but again, those stories from 252 to 257, which are in this Birth of Venom book, by the way, I don't really think they're relevant. I mean, yes, they do have the black suit, but they don't really do anything with it. Like, they're good stories, don't get me wrong, because I love Tom DeFalco era Spider-Man, but they don't, like, basically what I'm saying is they don't have anything to do with the Venom character other than it being the black suit on Spider-Man. Which is why I think this book made the right choice in just skipping to 258, where this issue, among many other things, such as Mary Jane revealing that she knew Peter was Spider-Man the whole time, which that is a story to talk about another time, but this issue does in fact reveal that the black suit is alive and is a symbiote on Spider-Man. And he goes to the Fantastic Four Baxter building to get it off of him. And this, of course, creates the infamous Spider-Man gag costume where the Human Torch plays a prank on him as he is without a costume and has to fight crime with a paper bag on his head and an old Fantastic Four suit. Of course, this is just for one issue, but still, it's a rather fun gag, and a rather famous one, too. So then, the black suit is put in containment. However, as we all know, not for long, as in the following issues of Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and various titles, the suit manages to escape, and it shows in these extra pages that I want to explain. These extra pages are from various titles. Like, they're not, like, see, it says excerpt from Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man 98. That is because the full story has nothing to do with the black suit. It's just that one page has the black suit in it. So, again, there's a lot of jumping around in this book. You really want, if you get this book and you're new to comics, you really want to pay attention to, you know, what issue is what. And, so eventually the black suit escapes and makes its way to Peter's apartment, which leads into Web of Spider-Man issue 1, which I love this cover. This is one of my favorite covers ever by Charles Vess. The story is pretty simple. It's the black suit attaches itself to Spider-Man again in a last attempt to bond with him. But Peter manages to remember, hey, this thing is weak to sound. It's weak to loud sounds. So after he fights a villain, not by his own choice though, after he fights a villain, he brings it to a church and tries to kill it and potentially himself. And he actually does almost die, but the suit saves him. I know that technically is a spoiler, but if you've seen the Spider-Man cartoon or Spider-Man 3, you know about the church bell scene. So then things get a little odd, I want to say. So the black suit is pretty much stated to be dead at the end of Web of Spider-Man 1. Like, that's it. They thought there's not going to be any more. That's the end of that. But something happens. A writer named David Michelini starts writing for Spider-Man in Web of Spider-Man, which is the third Spider-Man comic So it's like a third-rate Spider-Man comic. And in it, he reveals that there is some character who's been attacking Peter Parker, and it does not trigger his spider sense. They don't say who the character is at all. However, it's building up to something bigger. There's some kind of villain trying to kill Peter that doesn't trigger his spider sense, and they seemingly know that he's Spider-Man. So then, this is page 66. So then I want to get to my main problem with this book, which is the fact that you might want to get 2 books. This is called The Road to Venom. This is this paperback volume from a few years ago. It's relatively recent. And in this volume, there's a story called The Death of Jean DeWolf. I know that's technically a spoiler, but that really is what the title of the comic is. Now, this is one of the best Spider-Man stories ever, if you ask me. This is by Peter David, one of my favorite comic writers. You're definitely going to want this story if you're a huge Spider-Man fan. But the thing is, I won't spoil why or even what happens, but let's just say the story revolves around a character named the Sin Eater. And it becomes a media frenzy in Spider-Man's storyline. Okay? And Spider-Man inadvertently affects the media reporting on the Sin Eater. I won't explain how or why. You'll have to read for yourself. But let's just say those directly affect Eddie Brock. And it's stated in Eddie Brock's monologue in his first appearance. He basically just says outright, like, my career was affected because of the Sin Eater and Spider-Man affecting the stories on the Sin Eater. So, technically, Eddie Brock and the Black Suit are not in the Death Sin Eater storyline. However, I feel it's extremely essential because I'm going to tell you from experience. I read Spider-Man 300, which is the first Venom story, where he explains his monologue about why he became evil and all that. It doesn't make much sense if you've never read The Death of Jean DeWolf / the Sin Eater story, which is what I'm saying. Even though it's annoying as hell, if you go out and buy this book, do yourself a favor and get Road to Venom as well, so you can read the Sin Eater story. So remember that. Read pages 1 to 66 of the Omnibus, and then read the Sin Eater story, which is a 4-part story with a 3-part sequel. But the sequel isn't necessary. It's really just the 4 parts you want to read. And read those 4 parts in this book, and then go back to the Omnibus. So with that out of the way, page 67, we get to Spider-Man 298. Now, David Michelinie is no longer writing Web of Spider-Man. He's now on Amazing Spider-Man, which is the main Spider-Man title. So I guess to celebrate 300 issues, he decides he's going to reveal who that villain is finally, who doesn't trigger Peter's spider sense. And they tease the Black Suit at the end of 298. And then in 299, we see a Mary Jane walk home, because for context, they just got married in annual issue 21, but that's only 4 issues ago in current time of Spider-Man. So they just got married, so Mary Jane walks home. She thinks it's Peter, but it's actually Venom. And thus begins, at the end of Spider-Man 299, a tease for something amazing to come, which is the origin of Venom and Spider-Man's first fight with Venom in issue 300 of Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I won't spoil the story for anyone who's never read it, but let's just say there are some big things that happen here. Not just the first appearance of Venom, but this is really the beginning of a new era for Spider-Man. I mean, this is not the first issue by Todd McFarlane, but it's really the first major key issue, I think, other than, you know, maybe Michelini's first issue or McFarlane's first issue. But this, I think this, even though it's a comic from 1988, is where 90s Spider-Man really began. And, so yeah. Now, what's interesting is the Venom character was not intended to appear again. This was supposed to just be the end of that Black Suit saga. However, something incredible happened. People liked the character a lot, so they wanted him to come back. So in issue 315 of Spider-Man, or well, Amazing Spider-Man, they decided David Michelini and Todd McFarlane brought the character back. He's not in 315 much, which is why he's not on cover, but they include the full issue for a reason I won't spoil. But then in 316, yep, they are back to fighting, and I think Todd McFarlane's art improves a lot by this point. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I love Todd McFarlane, but he's not the best storyteller in the world. He's a very good poster / pinup artist, and he's not the greatest storyteller. Like, he can do action scenes, but like, I don't know, I'm not like crazy about the way he tells like dialogue scenes, for instance. His early issues of Amazing Spider-Man, like issue 300, like, you can tell he doesn't know what he's doing yet. He does not know what kind of artist he wants to be. I mean, he's got some semblance of it, but not a lot. But by these issues, you're like I mean, look at that. Like, you're like, sure, maybe it's older than, say, a Spawn artwork, but that is Todd McFarlane. That is what his art is like. Yeah, so we get 315 to 317, which is a story arc where Spider-Man fights Venom, and I won't spoil the comic, but it ends with Venom being put in the vault, which, I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea this story even existed till I got this omnibus, but basically the vault was a plot thing in Avengers and just the Marvel Universe in general, where supervillains would get put in a vault, which is a supervillain prison, basically. And I guess in the late 80s, after Todd McFarlane and Michelini made Venom so popular, they did this little graphic novel called Death Trap the Vault with Avengers. And I gotta be honest, other than the artwork, which shows Ron Lim doing Venom work, which Ron Lim later did a lot of Venom work in the 90s, I gotta be honest, I weren't the biggest fan of this story because of its characterization of Venom. It's, without spoilers, the story is essentially Venom starts a prison riot in the vault. But I don't think that fits Venom's character, because his whole thing, even as early as like the Todd McFarlane issues, he's just a weirdo. He thinks that he's actually the hero in the story. Like, he thinks he's protecting innocent people, but he's really not. And I don't think he'd intentionally cause a prison riot because of that basis alone. The character, though, is shown to really want to escape the vault. And so, even in other titles, like this random issue of Quasar, I hope I said that right, but like he tries to escape. Of course, that doesn't go too well. But then, in Spider-Man issue 330, something big happens again with the character of Venom. So, two things actually. One, he escapes again. He just escapes the vault. But second is, now he is being drawn by Erik Larsen because Todd McFarlane is no longer doing Amazing Spider-Man. Now Erik Larsen is the artist of Spider-Man, or at least Amazing Spider-Man. I gotta be honest. Erik Larsen is like top 5 comic artists for me. I don't think he's a very big fan of the Venom character. He's a very vocal man about his opinions online, but Mr. Larsen is a very talented artist, in my opinion. Not talented, skilled artist. Very fine, skilled artist at his craft. I think he's a great storyteller, great action teller. I mean, he's just a fantastic guy to draw comic books. And he still kicks ass, even now, with Savage Dragon. And if by some chance Larsen is watching this video, man, I love your work. Please keep doing what you do. Let's just say he does Venom, and, you know, it's pretty similar to Todd McFarlane at first. Not like the art style. Like, Erik has his very own art style. But, I mean, like, the way he draws Venom. He just kind of does, like, this big buff guy in a black Spider-Man suit with a mouth. Like, because that's how Venom was designed at first. But then, something changes. When Venom comes back in issue 346, for a reason I won't explain, because it's spoilers, Erik Larsen decides, you know what, let's give this guy a big jaw. Let's give him a lot of nasty teeth, a tongue, and ooze coming out of his mouth. Larsen explained on his Facebook once that this was an accident because he saw a cover art that Todd McFarlane did for a paperback where Venom had a big tongue. But Larsen explained years later, hey, it actually wasn't that he had a big tongue. It was just I looked at the picture wrong and thought he did. So, yeah, think about that. One of the most iconic things about the Venom character visually was a total mistake. It was a total accident by Erik Larsen. Like, how cool is that? Doesn't that speak how skilled this guy is? Like, he makes a total accident and creates one of the most iconic comic character looks of the 90s with it. I mean, well, maybe not creates, but you know what I mean. Like, he's the one who popularized that, and I think that's just sick. The Venom character is written off of the book with issue 347. I won't spoil why, but let's just say Venom isn't going to be here for a while. And they still use the character in some annuals with, like, backup stories as, like, flashback issues. But other than this weird crossover with Darkhawk, which is a total different discussion I don't even want to get into, Venom is just not very present for a little bit. However, there was something I forgot to mention because I was praising Erik Larsen, which is when Venom was in prison after a certain issue, they thought the symbiote was dead, so they just put him in a regular prison with this guy named Cletus Cassidy. Cletus is a serial killer, but let's just say when he escapes with Venom, Cletus gets his own little taste of the symbiote and becomes this guy named Carnage in issue 361. Well, technically he appears in 360, but 361 is his first full appearance. So, Spider-Man tries to fight Carnage, and by this point in the book, Erik Larsen is left too. Now it's being drawn by Mark Bagley, who a lot of people my age will know for Ultimate Spider-Man. But before Ultimate Spider-Man, he just did the regular Spider-Man book. And oh my god, he is a great artist too. He is like... He may have been the guy after Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson. But he was still a very talented artist with a unique style. Maybe not as pin-up / poster focused of a style, but he knew how to tell a story, and he knew how to have cool looking shit in his stories. And I think he deserves just as much credit for 90s Spider-Man as those other two guys. But let's just say Carnage becomes a lot to handle for Spidey. So he gets Venom to help him, but, you know, Venom isn't exactly a team player. So then, after that story, we get some more, like, annuals featuring the Venom character, which are just flashbacks explaining his backstory. So then, they make this one-shot, I think this was a mail-in issue, like you had to get it by mail back in the 90s, called The Trial of Venom. It's another Peter David comic. It's okay. Like, it's clearly just like a little one-shot they made just for the collectability, I guess. I mean, if I recall correctly, people bought it for the friggin' cover, not even the book. But the actual story is okay. It's about the trial of Venom with Daredevil and Spider-Man fighting Venom at the end. It's a fun little story, and Peter David does a good job writing it. So after that, Venom appears in an odd place next. Ghost Rider comics, because basically somehow when they're transporting Venom from one prison to the other, somehow these two villains break him out, and Venom, by this point, being the guy who thinks he's protecting the innocents, he's like, oh no, you broke me out, but you're not gonna get away with your crimes. So, of course, Spider-Man gets involved, and that leads to this 4-part story where Ghost Rider and a few other characters, along with Spider-Man and Venom, go into the sewers to try and find these villains, but also try and locate a character who has been taken by another villain for a reason I won't get into. But let's just say it's a silly 90s crossover with some horror elements. But I'm not gonna lie, I dug it. It's fun as hell. It's not peak writing by any means, but it is a fun little crossover with some good art from some really talented folks in the 90s. So after that, we get something a little odd in this book. We get a series of Marvel Comics Presents stories featuring Wolverine and Venom by Sam Keith. Sam Keith is one of my favorite Venom artists, but he hardly ever draws Marvel in general, to my knowledge. He's mostly known for his creator-owned series, The Max, which had an MTV show, I think. But, like, he was a good Spider-Man artist. Or not. He was a good Venom artist, and I guess he just wanted to do some kind of little thing with Venom and Wolverine in Marvel Comics Presents, which, for context, Marvel Comics Presents was a weekly comic series which had like 8-page Wolverine stories every issue. So he did like this little mini arc with just 8 pages per issue, and it's Wolverine and Venom. I won't spoil the story, but it's just weird and abstract. It's mostly for the art, but damn, is it good art. That's for sure. So then Spider-Man 373. So by this point, this is just my assumption here, but by this point I think David Michelinie which was basically Venom's creator, along with Todd McFarlane and others. I think he was just getting bored of writing Spider-Man vs. Venom, so he's like, I'm gonna make one last Venom fight with Spider-Man, and it's gonna be the last one. So in Spider-Man 373, they have a little backup story where Venom escapes yet again. And then in 374, Venom comes back to fight Spider-Man, and this time he is attacking someone very personal to Spider-Man. And I won't spoil who, because that's a whole nother can of worms, but let's just say it's somebody directly linked to Peter's past. And Peter's very angry about this and decides this is it. This is the final confrontation with Venom, which happens in 375, which is the 30th anniversary issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Well, that is their final confrontation, sort of, because somehow Peter gets Anne Wang involved. I hope I said that name right, but let's just call her Anne for short. Anne gets involved, which is Eddie's ex-wife, and Spider-Man saves her. And Venom is like, hey, you saved my ex-wife that I still love dearly. Maybe you aren't as bad as I think you are. So he says, if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. And then we can do our own separate thing. And Spider-Man is like, well, you know what? I can't seem to get rid of you, so let's just do that, huh? And that's where the story of Spider-Man vs. Venom ends, but not quite the book. So let me explain what happens next for all the comic newbies here watching this video. I'm pointing to it right now, but there's a book series in the Venom Omnibus Volume 1 called Lethal Protector of Venom. It's 6 issues. It was the first of many solo Venom comics. Now, this is not included in this book. It's included in the Venom Omnibus 1. However, I want to mention it because it explains something that you might want to know for the next story in this particular book that I'm reviewing. Just Venom is no longer in New York. He's back in San Francisco, which is where he was born and raised. But he comes back to New York because, let's just say, his very estranged offspring, Carnage, is back in action. And big action, I should say, because this is Maximum Carnage. So after Venom Lethal Protector is Venom's appearance in Maximum Carnage, which is a 14-part epic from the 90s. It is, you know how this will only make sense to comic readers, but you know how I felt like every week X-Men were having some big event with all the titles crossing over? Spider-Man did that exactly once, basically. Unless you count the Clone Saga. They did it with Maximum Carnage, and I'm not gonna lie, it's 90s cheese. It's a very specific style of comic from the 90s, and I love every second of it. When I first read it, I weren't crazy about it, but as I got older and started to appreciate 90s comics more, I'm like, you know what? This is fun. This is good fun. It's long, though. It is 14 issues, 2 of which are double-sized. So it's essentially 16 parts. So, I mean, I don't know how much Carnage and Venom y'all can stomach, but let's just say it's a big story. It's got some good artists, like Sal Buscema, Tom Lyle, Ron Lim, Mark Bagley, Alex Suviak. Like, again, seriously, some damn good artists, damn good writers, too. It is a fun time, and I'm glad it's where the book ended, because it's why I bought this book. Because there is a paperback I'm going to point to it right now. There is a paperback of Maximum Carnage that I wanted to get, but when I heard that this omnibus comes with Maximum Carnage and it's oversized, because you know it's bigger than a paperback, I'm like, hell no, I'm not getting a paperback. I'm getting this hardcover, even if I already own most of the stories in it. So that's what I did, and I'm not ashamed at all. So in the book, you get one last story, which calls back to the very beginning of the book. It's a short 12-page story. It's actually from David Michelinie's last issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but that David Michelinie wrote. So I guess this might have been his last Venom story up until the recent Lethal Protector series. But so in a way, it's one of the last stories of Venom by his original creator. But it's just a short filler story to essentially explain how Venom attacked Peter in those early Web of Spider-Man issues that I mentioned way earlier in this video. So that's where the book ends. Of course, you get extras though, and plenty of them. You get pin-ups, posters, magazine articles. This is cool. This is the poster for Spider-Man versus Venom and Carnage from the 30th anniversary issue. Just all kinds of cool stuff in the back. This I thought was interesting. A little introduction about how they created Carnage from David Michelinie. Again, seriously, this is just a good book if you're a Venom fan. And of course in the back, trading cards. Yep, the 90s trading cards of Marvel. So in this unfocused ramble of a video, how would I recommend this book? If you're a reader of comics already, I don't know how I'd recommend this book. That just depends on if you own a lot of these stories. If you just want Maximum Carnage, I say go for it. If you just want Venom, I say go for it. If you want chronological Spider-Man, don't let the title of this book fool you. This is a Venom book. This is Venom, the early years, or Venom Volume 0. So think of it as a Venom book. And if you want the early years of Venom in one place, then this is the volume for you. But for beginners, I'd say this is probably the best place to start Venom. I'm sure if you watch this whole video, you'll understand by now that Venom's history is very complex compared to, say, the movies and TV shows. So, I mean, other than that thing I mentioned earlier, where you might want to get this paperback for the Sin Eater story, honestly, this is the best place to start with Venom, and I'd definitely get this book while it's available because, fun fact, this book was made in 2018, but it went out of print and became very expensive, but Marvel reprinted it just a few weeks ago, actually, so this is one of the newer copies of it, and yeah, I'd say go for it while it's available, because who knows if they'll make a third printing at any point. So, yeah, I say go for this book. This is a good Venom early years collection. And other than that missing Sin Eater story, I say it's a perfect place to start. So with that, Spider-Man vs. Venom Omnibus gets a recommendation for Venom fans. For non-Venom fans, I don't know, but basically that's my recommendation. If you like Venom, get this book. That is the end of this video, and I will see you guys next time.